Today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Melody Sheppard. Dr. Sheppard, she is the head of the Shenandoah County Public School System, Superintendent, and with her is Whitney Mauck. Captain Whitney Mauck is in charge of our division that school resource officers report to here at the Shenandoah County Sheriff's Office. So we want to just chat a little bit about school safety. I think we've had 18 incidents over the last 34 school days, which is unusually high, but it's happening. It's not just happening in Shenandoah County. This is happening all around us, all throughout the Commonwealth, I think. And we were talking a little bit about that beforehand. We think maybe some of the acts of school violence that occurred right at the beginning of the school year might a little bit attribute that. But there's this other aspect, and that is the use of smartphones. What we're finding, though, with regard to use of smartphones is it's not really, it's a lot of it's just being used between students. You know, their Snapchat accounts and their private messaging and that kind of thing, video, TikTok, and those other social media platforms that they use. So I'm not sure if you wanted to discuss that at all about, what the board's been talking about lately.
Absolutely. So on October the 10th, the school board will make a decision on what they're going to do with the cell phone policy.
Okay.
So there'll be there are currently 2 drafts out there. The first draft is that cell phones will be limited bell to bell. Students won't have access to their cell phones bell to bell, so which means in the morning when they arrive at school to the afternoon when they leave. And then the second draft policy allows students to access their phones during lunchtime. But we have seen an increased number of threats through social media, whether it's Snapchat or TikTok.
Right.
And I think students are unaware that those are just as traceable as verbal threats.
Right. And, I don't know if you're seeing this with younger staff. We notice it with younger staff, that it's difficult for younger staff to verbally communicate with people like maybe what we were seeing 20 years ago. And it's because they rely so heavily on their smartphones, either through texting or, the way that they're using them to communicate. And it's just hard for younger people, I think, to have that contact. I'm not sure if the educators are seeing that with kids or what they're seeing with that.
We are. At lunchtime, you'll see kids on their cell phones,
right,
because currently our policy is that cell phones are to be away during instructional time.
Right.
So they'll have their phones out during lunch or before school or after school, and they're not talking to each other. They're using their cell phone to do the conversations for them. So this actually, this new cell phone policy will help with students' mental health. And it'll also get them communicating with each other.
I think so. I agree with that. One of the things we're doing with the younger staff, we have a young staff member come in weekly and brief the sheriff on what happened the previous week. And I do that not to try to catch them doing anything wrong, but I want them to be, if they can communicate with me and senior staff, the way I'm thinking is then they can communicate with the public in Shenandoah County. And I don't think they're put in those positions enough to have that requirement. So we've been doing that now for, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. So I just think it's better for people. I mean, we're just seeing that with younger people that we hire and promote. It's just, the smartphone is the way to communicate now. So as far as one of the things Whitney and I have talked about in the past when we work these events, and we talked about this with the Commonwealth's attorney and Dr. Heingartner the last time we had a conversation, was when we can get charges, criminal charges, we can develop probable cause, we're making charges. We believe people when they say that they're going to commit an act of violence or a threat. And one of the things that we do now with regard to social media is, as you talked earlier, tracking that is not as easy as maybe, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, because you still have to go from person to person to person, trying to find out, who shared it to who. And some of those things, Whitney, we find are old, that are like recycled.
From a different county, from a different state.
Right.
2 years ago, and it just resurfaces.
But some of those are people that actually they initiated here. And if it's initiated here or with one of our students, and we again, it's a written threat, then we go ahead and act accordingly. It's the sharing out of the post or what have you that many times those end up being just, I guess, handled administratively by the school, and so that's kind of the way we're looking at the social media post. Was it originated here, or was it just simply something that's being shared out with students? And as far as parents' notification, if we make a charge, and we ought to talk about notifications a little bit, I guess, but if we make a charge, we put something out that, hey, this happened and we made a charge. If it's an administrative action, we basically look to the school system to go out and put a notice out.
So mid-September, we changed our practice a little.
Okay.
So before we were just sending out notifications when parents or community were limited to access the school. Since then, we have decided that we will send out notifications for that. So whether the school is in lock-in or lockdown, we'll send out notification. And a lot of notifications so that parents have information so that they aren't worried about what's going on and they are as informed as they can be.
Right. I know we try to, sometimes there's some criticism for our agency and the school system as well, as far as people want to know every detail. You really can't give every detail at the time. I think what we're trying to get to is that we're aware of the issue, we're handling the issue, and if there is an ongoing threat or not an ongoing threat, we want people to know that.
Right. Yep. So the other piece that we've changed is we are now notifying parents if there was a charge for a school threat. So that is the new piece of communication that we're giving now.
Okay. Whitney, anything on those notifications?
No, up until this point, I think we've done a great job, just the communication between the two agencies and making sure that they're putting out what we're putting out and it's consistent. I think consistency is the key. When we have a charge, we're going to put it out. By the time that we put it out to people in the community, the parents of the suspected individual have already been notified. So it takes us a little bit of time to work our investigation, but as soon as we can get the notification out, we do.
And, I want people to understand, as that's happening, there's a communication that's happening between the school system and law enforcement. Because I think that's critical, making sure that the messaging is consistent. Right. Because I can remember a time where law enforcement agency would put out something, school system would put out something different, and those were not good times.
And we're really grateful for the communication and the partnership that we have with the Shenandoah County Sheriff's Office. It has been, so this is the start of my 4th year, and our relationship has been really good and really strong. So I'm looking forward to a continued partnership for the next 4 years.
Right. Dr. Sheppard, we try to tell kids also that even though there's not maybe a criminal charge, the school system takes these things seriously. And there are administrative actions that you can take when there's no crime committed, for example. We're trying to modify the behavior so they see the inappropriateness of it. And the school system has tools that they can use administratively to do that. And we want young people to know that, people that watch this video, parents that watch this video. We had a call just the other week. A parent called in, and they were concerned about something that happened at school. And we try to give them a level of confidence that they know that we're working together. If it's a criminal charge, we're taking that seriously and we're handling that. If it's an administrative charge, we're taking that, or school system's taking that seriously, and they are handling that. And I just want to make sure that parents have that comfort in knowing that. I got to tell you, when I look around the Commonwealth, I really believe that Shenandoah County is on the path where they're trying to do the best and the right thing. And we've been doing that for quite some time now. So going back to the partnership and the cooperation piece.
So one of the things that I don't think students are aware of is the amount of fear and anxiety that they create whenever there's a threat. And we definitely take that very seriously because we don't want our students or our staff to be afraid to come to school.
Right. So, Whitney, when we get one of these calls, and regardless of whether it's a crime reported or an administrative incident, law enforcement and schools are working together from the very beginning.
Right. So as soon as it's reported, regardless if it's reported to an SRO or it's reported to an administrator, those two individuals are speaking with each other and working directly with each other as soon as it's reported. So they're in the office together working this incident with each other. They don't have to pick the phone up and call because there's an SRO already in that building. It's reported directly to them, and they're in the office either having conversations with juveniles, standing by and observing conversations with juveniles from administrators, and just investigating the incident at the same time with each other.
Right.
And also when we have a report on the weekend of a threat, so the school principals, Whitney Mauck and her group will investigate those together until we come to a conclusion of whether it was a valid threat or not.
Right, and we've had so people, listeners, watchers can know we've had a long standing position within both of our organizations that, you know, if there's an incident of violence, we're all awake, we're all working on it, and we're all trying to assess, you know, what it is, if it is a threat, a legitimate threat or not. And again, I'm with you there. There's been many phone calls at night.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, sometimes that means we're sending a phone call at 11 p.m. And that's not something that I really like to do because I know people are in bed at that time. But there's enough widespread information out there that we need to clear it up so people feel, our students and our staff feel safe coming to school the next day.
Going back to social media basically, some of these incidents take a life of their own. And it's just that sharing out that it just keeps going and going and going. And, you know, those one of the things we can't stop, but we can get to the root of the issue. And then once we've gotten to the root of the issue, try to communicate that out. And hopefully that then starts to get shared and put out with regard to parents and students. So there's no fear to go to school the next day.
And we've sent out communication a couple of times that please talk to your students, to parents in the community. Please talk to your students about if they see something, please tell a trusted adult. And then we've also had assemblies at all of our schools, whether it's classroom by classroom or a big assembly in the gymnasium, telling students if you see something or you hear something, let an adult know so that we can investigate it quickly.
After the assemblies, you know, I think juveniles have realized if I share this, there's going to be consequences. If I post this, there's going to be consequences. I think we're seeing now that when they do hear something or they see something, they're reporting it immediately. They're not waiting until they get home. So I think what we're doing in the proactive approach from both agencies and partnering together, I think it's starting to work.
I agree with that.
So the school division, and I shared this with the school board at the last work session, the school division actually suspends students for 2 weeks with a hearing in front of the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, and the likelihood that a student has made a threat in school will return to their high school is pretty slim that year. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the previous conversation with the Commonwealth's attorney, I mean, her position is if it creates fear and there's probable cause for a charge, we're going to make the charge, and we do that. And we also know, and I think parents and students are beginning to realize that there are also school consequences with that charge.
That's right.
We take the position here. If a student makes a threat, we believe them. If there's probable cause, we will make the charge. But before we make the charge, we have it evaluated with juvenile intake, the Commonwealth's attorney, and we make sure that this is the appropriate charge to make. And then there are school consequences. And
well, just to add to that too, I know a lot of these things when they happen, people think that the juvenile is just being arrested and sent to juvenile detention, but there's also a portion of this to where these juveniles who make these threats, they end up getting services by going into the juvenile justice system. So
Right.
if it's a mental health thing, if it's something like that, they're getting services through that.
So in reference to the phone policy changes or possible changes, are you seeing any data with regard to students that don't have any access to cell phone, or how are they managing through that?
Yep. So there's been research of school divisions who have had a cell phone policy that is stricter than ours, and the data that they're seeing is that the students are starting to engage, grades are going up, and they are having real conversations at lunch and during their walks in the hallway. So it has had a really positive impact on students' socialization during the school day.
Right. Well, I know when we have our youth leadership camp, one of the things, we're in a place where you can't really have, the cell service is not very good access, or just not very good. And we take smartphones when they first get there. We let them know that if they have to contact their parents, they can through a counselor or school resource officer. Their parents can come and visit for like lunch or breakfast or dinner. But we start to notice after a couple of days that they begin to engage. And in other words, there's a little bit of anxiety in the beginning, but it kind of subsides over a couple of days. I don't know how you feel about that, Whitney.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see them be kids again. So they're not directly connected to a phone, and you're out here with no cell service, no phone. You're just out there with 29 other kids, and you have to connect with each other. And I think that's part of the issue now is there's no disconnect for these students at all. It's just all day long and the phone all day long, and then they get home and it just keeps going. That's why, and then the Snapchats get spread and things like that. There's no disconnect like there used to be.
There are other things that are going on as far as pre-planning and training and preparation to deal with incidents of school violence or school threats. Whitney, I don't know if you want to speak on that at all.
So myself and Sergeant Green have been going and speaking at each campus with each school, all the faculty members for each school, and teaching them active threat and run, hide, fight. And I think it's been super beneficial. We've had really good feedback, and it's just to be proactive, to keep their brains turning and pre-plan, not be paranoid, but be prepared for if and when that happens. While we're doing that, we have the meetings for the school safety board, and we go through things as in like structurally if there's issues that need to be changed. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
So this afternoon, we're actually going to have a meeting to debrief about one of the incidents that happened earlier. So this is helpful in what did we do well, what can we do better, and how do we move forward. So it's a great partnership with the SROs because at the end of the day, we're just getting better.
Right. It's comforting for me as a parent, and I hope for other parents to know that these things are going on behind the scenes. And there's like this process that goes on. But I do think Shenandoah County, from what I've watched and been a part of over the last, I guess it's almost 30 years, that it seems like we're always trying to take positive steps forward here in Shenandoah County. And I think that happens in other jurisdictions as well. It's unfortunate, but it's what we do. And I think it's important for parents and families to know that even though we have these policies regarding, school sanctions or cell phone use or law enforcement charges, I wanted to make sure that parents knew that there were still other things that are being done behind the scenes, debriefings of incidents that occur, pre-planning, training, and that kind of thing. I think that's important. All right, everyone. Well, listen, thanks so much for watching. And this is Shenandoah County Sheriff Tim Carter. And Dr. Sheppard, thanks for joining us today. And Captain Mauck, thanks for being here with us. And look forward to seeing you next Thursday night.